To our second meeting of our school year. I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. If you are able to, and comfortable doing so, please stand. We acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas, of the Anishinaabe, of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. As well, at our executive meeting this month, it was brought up that as we do the land acknowledgement, that we would consider doing or singing the Canadian National Anthem. We'd asked Michelle to take this back to staff to offer us some feedback.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We've been doing some preliminary explorations as to circumstances under which the anthem is played. So we've just explored here at the board, connected with the City of Toronto in terms of their protocols around whether their committees play the anthem. To date, we've learned that their committees, the only place where the anthem is played is actually in council, and their subsidiary committees do not play the anthem. So I just wanted to bring that information back. I've reached out to a couple of the districts, and I'm waiting to hear back just to their process, whether their subsidiary, meaning advisory committees, play the anthem, or it's just done at the actual board level. I hope to bring something more fulsome back to the committee to share with the chair and the committee and the rest of the committee as soon as I hear back from other districts in terms of their practice.
Thank you, Michelle. So if at least those in the room as well as online are comfortable with us, not that we will not do this, but trying to receive more information that we can possibly move on, and that could be a future item we include in our meetings. As well, one thing I'd also like to share is that PIAC has a code of conduct. So I do encourage everybody to view that. I'm not going to put it up on a screen or review it, only because we have more business to conduct this meeting. But our code of conduct is about respectful language, respectful engagement, about working as a group. Again, there's more to that. I'm not going to dictate it all out here, but I would ask everyone to be familiar with the code of conduct. As well, at this time, I'm going to ask anybody to declare any change of membership status. So based on our eligibility of PIAC membership, items like, are you no longer living in the ward that you are currently elected in? Is your child, sorry about that, just your child that attends a TDSB school? Do we have any change of membership status at this time? Latha, did you see any hands up or any notes in the chat? Thank you. As well, we have our approval of the consent agenda as well as our meeting minutes from September. Those meeting minutes were sent out to allow everyone to take a look at those, to provide any changes when it comes to the minutes. Are there any changes to those minutes, corrections that need to be forwarded to our parent engagement office before we set a motion to approve those? Hearing none, although if there are corrections you'd like to make, we can hold off right now and approve those next meeting. I see none in the room, none online. Janice, you're looking on there? Do we, I mean, I'd ask Latha, I know she's busy, but do we see anything online? Anybody who'd like to? Okay. So could I have somebody second these, thank you. Thank you, Janice. And
you need someone to second them?
Can I get a seconder?
Yep.
Thank you.
Word to Francis.
Thank you, Francis. Okay. Janice Port's motion and then it's seconded by Francis. Yeah. Okay. At this time, what I will also do is I will ask somebody in the room. I go to the room first and then I will go online. But if anybody in the room at this time would like to volunteer to sit with me as chair tonight, as I need a chair to sit with me at our meeting.
Happy to help.
I see Janice would like to help me out. Thank you, Janice. You wanna- So again, those who are new to PIAC, what happens is when there's one chair, the chair will then ask the room if anybody would like to chair with them for the meeting. Oh, you choose. Yep. It's up to you. No worries. Okay, moving on. So it takes me to a co-chair report. I did submit a co-chair report, so it is all there for people to look at. If you have any questions, you're definitely welcome to ask me questions. It's not a very long report. It doesn't, it's pretty straightforward. Just some items encouraging people to get involved, of course, and to understand there's events going on that parents and caregivers may want to be aware of and that they may want to register for, such as the Parents as Partners Conference coming up. It is virtual, it is free, it is filled with information, it is filled with opportunities to connect, and that will be November the 16th. And there's a link provided in the digital document as well as a paper document for more information so you can register. Also, I'd like to take the opportunity this evening, as we feel awful that it didn't happen sooner, but we had to get all of ourselves organized. I would like to take the moment, as it's also mentioned in the co-chair report, to recognize two of our former co-chairs. They are both here tonight. We have Andrew Waters. If I could get, actually, when I call you up, if you can come on over here to me, it'd be great. But we have Andrew Waters, who is currently on PIAC, but did hold the role of co-chair, and that his term had ended as co-chair in November of 2024. He remained as a liaison supporting PIAC and is currently the rep of Ward 3. Andrew, can I have you come up here so you can receive your certificate?
Sorry, can you hear me? Thank you. I was not made aware of this possible acknowledgement prior to the meeting, and at this time, I'm not comfortable with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay, and we also have Sharon Grant, who also was our co-chair and had graduated out of the TDSB, as her son had graduated from the TDSB, and therefore her term as co-chair also graduated out of PIAC. So Sharon, if you want to come up here, you can receive your certificate, absolutely.
Through you, Chair, there are a number of people who are online who are here to acknowledge Sharon's exiting of her role as co-chair in the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee. So I just wanted to acknowledge their presence here and thank them for coming to honor Sharon, also known as Auntie Sharon throughout the district. And I think there was a gift created for her by the parent caregiver engagement workers of the board who knew her very well. And I think the cups that they provided for you is Auntie Sharon, because they all know her as Auntie Sharon. So on the behalf of the parent caregiver engagement workers who you've worked with across the district, they wanted to say thank you in their way for the work that you've done at your ward and your local level. And I just wanted, Chair, to acknowledge all of those who've come tonight just to acknowledge and honor the work that Sharon had done for the board within her role as PIAC, not just as the chair, but just as ward rep. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you again, Sharon, for all of your hard work and dedication. Thank you. So moving on, we now have our trustee, Mateus De Vitas, to offer us a trustee report. Yes. Andrew, go ahead.
Hello. The question I have is, after we received the information that last year's budget and spending at the operational effectiveness meeting, it was discovered, and I know there's likely an ongoing investigation on this, that $2,000 was spent where there was no approval from the committee. I wonder if you could speak on that.
Thank you, Andrew. That was discussed within the operational effectiveness. They would have had in the reports. Do we have anyone online? Kay Dean from the Operational Effectiveness Working Group. Thank you. Noted, Andrew. And again, this was discussed. So I appreciate your note to that. And we will take it back to the operational effectiveness again if there's concerns.
Sorry, a follow-up question. Again, it was co-chairs, including yourself, and board staff that approved the spending. I was wondering if you could speak on it.
The event was something that, again, had been discussed. There were PAC members in attendance. This was a catering cost that was no different than catering events that PAC does do, but as well as board staff here as well. Michelle, could you speak to that as well, please?
Through you, Chair, I do recall that the operational working group met and discussed this. I do recall at the exec meeting, I'd also heard the operational group chair, and I could recall incorrectly say that this was resolved at that level and they're not aware of anything that was to be moving forward on this. And that in that report that they had outlined processes moving forward. That's all I could contribute to that in respect of what was discussed at that working group level.
Thank you, Michelle. And again, to the point that the Operational Effectiveness Working Group had discussed this at length. Thank you.
Sorry, one last follow-up question. So that money was spent, but there were several motions last year related to, one was the personalized business cards for PAC members that was approved by the committee, and that did not move forward. Can you please speak to, as co-chair, how you decide which motions you want to continue with or support, which ones you don't, and if you can provide any kind of clarity to the committee, or maybe you can do this after we approve something saying you're not going to move forward with it, or just have an understanding of how you make decisions.
Thank you, Andrew. So when it came to the business cards, as you've mentioned that, there were logistics that were behind the lack of business cards being produced. There were discussions within the communications working group, actually, because they would have been taking on part of that role to actually design and have those business cards go out. If the communications working group co-lead would feel comfortable speaking to that, that would be great, because that was also part of a discussion as to why that particular item did not take place. Do we have Seema here? I believe one of the items when it came to the business cards, I can speak to this now and then we may take this offline. I'm happy to do so. We can have another discussion about the business cards and items. And that is when it came to the information that was being required to be put on those business cards, they included email addresses. And we want to make sure those email addresses were accurate and we had the permission of members to have those email addresses on the business cards. But again, further discussions, it's all about process. And I'm happy to discuss that in a working group meeting. Okay, folks? If we could move on to the next item, thanks.
Sorry, one last question. I guess PAC is known to be like, try to be a model for school councils. And I guess, how are we being a model for school council when we have co-chair and staff spending money that's not approved, and then co-chair and other members making decisions and not supporting it? This would be like a school council, like a principal and a co-chair choosing to spend the money how they would like. I know at this committee over the last, I've been here for 5 years, I've heard numerous examples of this and of PAC members expressing concern around how principals and handle these types of situations and don't appreciate that. So I guess how can PAC be a model when it appears this type of issue is occurring in our community?
Thank you, Andrew. Actually, one thing that was discussed in that operational effectiveness meeting was how PIAC can improve itself, how we can change our processes. And to my understanding, as Michelle as well was at that meeting, other members of PIAC that were at that meeting are also online and in the room tonight, accepted the fact that we need to change our process. And that is something that committees do. That is something that as human beings, we sort of learn what a process is, where it is broken and where we fix it. School councils will do that as well. So if there's a concern about how we do something, then by all means we go back and we make sure that we can find a process that is even more transparent than it was before. So again, we're human and we are going to change what we do to make it better. And I think that's what everybody, at least in the operational effectiveness working group, was striving towards.
Thank you. Just one comment. Again, I'm not hearing about accountability, transparency, nor inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. If everyone is comfortable and there are no other questions, I'd like to move on to our trustee report. Over to you, Trustee Mateus Duvitas.
Hi, thank you so much, Sina. I really appreciate all the work that you've had to shoulder over the last few months. I want to take an opportunity to congratulate Sharon for all the commitment, all the late meetings, all the hours that she spent on this. I very much appreciate the work that she's done in my district, but then also with PIAC over the last a little while, and you know, and take an opportunity to thank everybody that's here. I don't think anybody's here tonight taking time out of the busy time, the busy lives, to do anything but to try and help improve public education. And you know, when we can, we should recognize folks for what they do. And I want to thank everyone that's here today doing this work, and I want to thank the folks that were recognized today. My report. I wanted to share a few things in the report. One of them is that in a week we open up the early, the French immersion application process. We're trying to expand the French immersion program at the TDSB into more locations, and that requires making sure that our parents, particularly in the suburbs, are better informed of where those spaces are. So I'm asking folks here to share that information, how it is that parents can apply for special interest programs, French immersion, and so on. All those deadlines are coming up. So I included that there. The online application process starts on November 4th, closes on the 29th for French immersion specifically. The second item I included was budget timeline that was about to be debated. We made some small changes. We're going to try and get information to folks a little bit earlier. But generally speaking, you have a process in here. I'm going to say that as vice chair for the finance committee, one of the things I wanted to do was to open up more space for PIAC in general, to have access to this information earlier in the process, and for us to hear your input as well. So I've asked that of staff as well, because I want to make sure that we get that information through you to all of our parents. And I think that's important. I've got one foot in each committee, so I wanted to be able to bridge some information to you folks. I think that's important as well. And then tomorrow, there's a special discussion that is being held by the Center for Excellence for Black Student Achievement. This is a webinar. I included the information to register. It's in the PDF that's been shared with you folks as well. That's my report. Happy to take questions. And as always, happy to take things back to the board on your behalf. Thank you.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Hello. Just when you're speaking about trying to expand the French immersion program, I'm also part of the French as a Second Language Advisory Committee, and I've attempted at that committee to raise the issue. I don't understand why registration for I guess, English kindergarten is in February, and that's well advertised. It's culturally known in Toronto that that is the month to register. But the French immersion program registration is in November, and it appears this year it's even shortened. It's actually technically not November. It's like November 4th to like the 28th or 29th or something. So I don't know if trustees can do anything about this, but you know, I am very concerned that parents, especially parents new to the board or parents, you know, from different equity-seeking groups may find it challenging and miss the opportunity to have their kids enter the French immersion program. The French immersion program used to be entry point in senior kindergarten. And again, that kind of made sense for a November registration because parents were likely in the board for at least a year, kind of understanding things and can do that. But basically, parents who are not even involved in the school board, if they miss their November opportunity or then miss French immersion until entry point in grade 7. I don't know if there's anything the trustees can do about this, but it appears board staff have indicated they're not moving towards standardizing the registration process at this moment.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So there's two parts to it, I think, right? Like, you know, ideally, yes, that would be a better path forward to have registration happen at the same time. The difficulty with it currently that the TDSB has, as well as every other school board in Ontario, is the shortage of teachers. So it takes longer to set up the programs for next year because we don't have enough teachers. I have several French immersion schools that have shortages of full-time teachers, even as they're offering full-time positions in the TDSB, which are generally lucrative and so on. So it's a matter of logistics. It's a matter of not having enough people fill in all the spots. I had a meeting with the folks that run the French program at the school board just about 10 days ago. Went through some of the same questions. I don't have a better answer for you. We don't have extra resources to throw at it. So it isn't like staff don't know that that's a barrier. So the second part of the question or the answer, which is what I'm going to try and do, is for you folks that are here to try and distribute as much information as you can and to promote the dates where you can through your parent councils. I'm going to try and go to early on centers and other spaces like that for the month of November and try and hope to raise awareness with folks. But it's an absolute barrier and it's a difficult spot where we're at. And again, it goes back to resources and how we can promote the program and how we can organize the logistics around this. So not necessarily the answer that I wanted when I talked to staff a few days ago. It's not something that we can easily or quickly change. Otherwise, it would have been done because everybody recognizes that it creates an issue, particularly for those families that you're mentioning. And in my district, that's the majority of the families. So I have that concern and I share that. But thank you for raising the question.
Sorry, I just have one additional comment. Again, I think it's a lack of creativity on board staff. I think, like, I've been hearing cases across the ward that I represent as a PIAC member, where it's kind of a revolving door of teachers for French immersion and those kind of pieces. Obviously, there are these shortages. I guess, you know, from my experience, when I've been involved in, you know, hiring and those kind of pieces and, you know, working in an organization is, you know, there should be an ability to project. I think, you know, hire as many French immersion teachers as possible, because ultimately they could also operate in the English stream. So again, I really think the board needs to push TDSB staff because again, this is, you know, I think it was what, 4 years ago that we moved to from senior kindergarten to kindergarten entry, and there really shouldn't be this, you know, almost 4-month discrepancy in registration. Thank you.
I'm just going to respond to that because it's easy to criticize, and I understand where you're coming from. But again, there are no more French teachers to hire. So, you know, increasing the percentage of zero isn't going to help you because 100% of zero is still zero. If there are no more folks out there to hire, because we haven't trained them yet, or we haven't given them the credentials, then it's difficult. We deal with this every time there's a report incoming that deals with French, hiring, VPs, all kinds of different issues. So EC throws stones that way, but it's a problem that all school boards have. So I guess we're making the argument that all school boards don't know what they're doing. I think it's a matter of resources and the availability of folks that are qualified to do a job. And there's some progress, but obviously not enough.
Do we have any more questions for Trustee Matias? Thank you very much, Trustee Matias.
All right, thank you. So now we will be moving on to discuss the school council funds and transparency. And our guest tonight is Craig Snyder, Executive Officer of Business Services. And we also have Stephanie Harris, Comptroller of Finance and Entrepreneurship Risk Management, and Brandy Waldriff, Finance Support and Manager. Please go ahead.
Thank you for inviting us tonight, and I will turn it over briefly to Stephanie to walk you through a presentation we have for you, and we're happy to take questions at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Craig. So my name is Stephanie Harris, and I am the Comptroller of Finance and Enterprise Risk here at the TDSB. I'm just going to just pause for a second. Brandy Waldriff is going to assist with, we have some slides which will help us move through the material tonight. So thanks, Brandy. So thank you, PEC members, for inviting us to spend a few minutes with you tonight. We're certainly happy to be here to present this report on school-generated funds. So at tonight's presentation, what I'm going to do is provide a high-level overview of school-generated funds. That's how I'm going to refer to them throughout the presentation. Some of you may know them as non-board funds. The terminology of school-generated fund is a ministry terminology, but both refer to the same thing. And I'm going to specifically respond to questions that were asked during the June 2024 PEC motion. So the way the presentation is formatted, the questions that arise from the motion are highlighted in the box with the red square around it. So this is just a cut and paste from the motion, so you can sort of follow that along as I go through the materials. So the first question in the motion was an ask that the director provide a report on school-generated funds, which included not only funds raised by school council, but also non-board funds that were raised by schools. So basically all the other funds except for school councils. So just so the committee is aware, every February, the finance team presents a report on school-generated funds to the Finance, Budget, and Enrollment Committee of the board, which is known as FBAC. And we are going to share an extract of that report with the slide deck that we're presenting tonight for the committee. So it's not the full report that went to FBAC, but rather a small slice that responds to the question that was specifically asked. All of the board meeting minutes are publicly available on the TDS website. So if you want to see the entire report, you can follow to the FBAC meeting in February to see the entire contents. So the report that we're going to be circulating with these materials when we send them out to you is actually the balances at the end of 22-23. We are currently in the process of undergoing our year-end audit work for our year ended August 31st, 2024. And we will present those numbers as soon as the audit's complete. And again, we'll be providing another full report to FBAC in February 2025. So just so you are all aware of what to expect, this is a sample snip of the report we will be providing. So you can see that it's basically a list of schools and the total school generated funds that are available split between the school and the school council. Now, as some of you will be familiar with, many school councils do have their own separate bank account. In some cases, school councils do not have a separate bank account. So in order to generate this report, we have pulled the school council categories within the KEV accounting system to parse out the school council funds for the purpose of this report. And you will notice that there's some schools that don't have school council funds listed in the report. And that is two reasons for that. One is that there is no active school council at that school, or the second reason could be that the funds raised by the school council will not separately allocated within the accounting system. So we do know that there are schools that choose to provide funds and then they just get commingled with the rest of the school funds. So that would be another reason why you wouldn't see a balance. So the second question that the PAC committee asked was to be provided with a definition and the reporting criteria of school generated funds that specifies school council fundraising and schools fundraising. And so the definition that's included on this report is actually the ministry definition of school generated funds, which is the same definition that we apply at the TDSB. So essentially, school generated funds are funds that are raised or collected in the school or in the community in the name of the school by either school councils or school or parent groups. And these funds are administered by the school principal and are raised or collected from sources other than the operating or capital budgets of the schools. And so the definition further goes on to clarify that school generated funds are not only fundraising for school purposes, but they also include a number of other funds that are collected and paid out through school accounts for a variety of things. And most commonly, these are things like field trips, where the school brings in money for a specific purpose and then pays it out to the vendor once the students are ready to go on the trip. So just so I think most of you are familiar, but typical sources of school generated funds, obviously through the hard work of parent councils, lots of funds are generated for the benefit of the schools. There are also activities that happen within the schools that the schools arrange themselves directly, little bake sales, other things that students may be doing. In many schools, especially high schools, a student activity fee is collected. Sometimes fees are collected for certain sports or other extracurriculars. And as I previously mentioned, field trips are another source of school generated funds. So what are school generated funds used for? So the overall general concept that we apply at the board is that they really complement the existing budget of the school, which is obviously provided corporately through the operating and capital budget. And that helps to fund extras within the school. So things like guest speakers, additional play art equipment, extra computers, activities for sports teams. If students are involved in co-curriculars, things like yearbooks, field trips, and subsidies for students who may not economically be able to participate in certain activities, then school generated funds can be used to defray costs for those students. So the third question in the motion was really that principals regularly report to their school councils on the school's fundraising of school generated funds. So I just wanted to provide some general background so the committee understood how school generated funds are managed at the schools. So school generated funds are kept in a separate bank account. So as I mentioned, some school councils have their own bank account, but if a school council doesn't have their own bank account, then the school itself has a separate bank account for all the school generated funds. So those funds are never commingled in with the operating funds. Obviously a key part of transparency. The principal has oversight of the funds, and our general concept is that the funds should be spent within 2 years. And the reason we say that to schools and school councils is we want to make sure that that money that's being collected that comes in is used for the benefit of the current students and doesn't just accumulate in a bank account. So again, for transparency and reporting purposes, school-generated funds are consolidated with the funds of TDSB. So they are part of our annual financial statement audit that's conducted every fall. And I just want to underscore a very important point that school-generated funds will never be used to operate, to balance the operating budget. So I hear that sometimes, and my team and I try to dispel that myth, but it's a very important point that these are funds that are raised by communities, by schools, for complements within the school, not to be used by for the general operating budget of the school. And the last point of clarification I want to make is that some schools have home and school associations. Home and school associations are separate legal entities, so they are not part of the TDSB board. And as such, any funds that are raised in the name of a home and school are not part of the school's school-generated funds. So to follow up the specific question about what reporting obligations there were for school councils, each fall, principals and schools are required to provide a school-generated funds financial plan and needs assessment. And essentially what that plan does is articulate what the inflows, the revenues, and the expenses relating to the funds will be during the year. And really the goal of this report is to ensure this concept of the funds are being spent on a timely basis for the benefit of students, and that there's a good plan to use that money effectively within the school. The second concept is if there is a school council at the school, that the expectation would be that at each meeting, there would be a statement about the school council account, the inflows and the outflows provided to the committee at that meeting by the treasurer. And then as far as our statutory reporting goes, we have a semi-annual report. So that covers August to March. That's due April of every year. And then there's a year-end compliance report that is used to basically facilitate the audit for school-generated funds. And that's due in September each year for each school. So for further clarity, and I'm now extracting from the school-generated fund guidelines, principals are required to provide reports to school councils as required. So I think if there's questions about funds that are being raised at the school or information that is needed, school councils should be, asking for the information that they need and the reports that they need. And certainly as finance, we're committed to help principals provide the information that's being asked for. And the second point I would add is that principals are expected to review and sign off on the bank statements for their school on a monthly basis to ensure that they're reviewing the activity and that the accounting is being done and reconciled properly on a monthly basis. So the next question in the motion was that principals regularly report to their school councils on the school's budget, including but not limited to model school funding and school nutrition program funding. So for the benefit of the committee, the budget model that is applied at TDSB is publicly available on the website. And I've attached a link there so that you can go and take a look And at that link, essentially what you'll find is information about how the budget is parsed out by school. So how much per pupil, if there's extra money, for example, for musical instruments, how much is applied based on the overall budget formula. And there's actually a drop down button that you can press where you can look at the individual budget for each school to see what budget was actually provided. So that's currently available for 24-25 on the website right now. I would further add that principals are encouraged to create a budget committee. And if they do create a budget committee at their school, then it needs to include school council representation if there is a school council at the school. And I just want to bear in mind that there are a few allocations that come later in the year, so they're not, for example, available right now. An example of that is we true up budgets for schools based on actual enrollments, and it takes time to process the fall enrollments and make those adjustments to budget. So often the final budget numbers are not known until December. Although at this moment in time, principals know largely what their budget is. So this is just a sample of what the budget allocation looks like on the web. You can see there's a link to the model which articulates what it is in detail. And then there's the drop-down button I mentioned where you can actually look for your own local school. Because the question related to school nutrition programs, the expectation is that program sites that have nutrition programs are encouraged to establish a nutrition program committee. And the purpose of that committee would be to coordinate both the activities of the nutrition program as well as any financial matters associated with the program. If there is a local nutrition program committee, it can be its own standalone committee and operate separately, or it can be part of the school council, or it could be a committee of the school council. So how the nutrition program committee is structured is really variable at different schools. But if a school does not have a nutrition program committee, then it could be included as a standing item during the school council meetings. And I'm saying that so that it's clear that if the school council has an interest in understanding the financial information associated with the nutrition program, this is something that the school should be working towards to ensure that gets on the school council agendas. So the last question was that each fall information and training be provided about budgets and school generated funds, and that training really be applied to principals, office administrators, and school council treasurers. So in general, we offer training as a finance team multiple times throughout the year to principals, vice principals, other folks within the schools who have financial accountabilities. Based on some of the questions and obviously your comments once I'm finished my presentation, we're happy to reinforce these requirements with email communication so that everyone's reminded about these expectations. And for school council treasurers, there is a financial information session that is linked on the website that you can go and navigate and hopefully will help. So in addition to the training, we recognize that there are certainly unique things that happen at each school, very specific circumstances. My best suggestion, if you sort of looked at the training materials that are available and you still have questions, you can reach out to our business services help desk. The hours, the number, the email are all listed here. In many cases, they can help answer the question directly, but if they can't, they will put you in touch with the financial support officer for your local school. And just so the committee is aware, each school has a financial support officer. that is really the business liaison that can help with financial related questions and support. And school council treasurers can definitely liaison with the financial support officer if there is a need for that. So the best way to connect is using this information listed. So that is our presentation, which is really to address the questions that were asked in the June PEC motion. I'm happy to take questions at this time.
All right, we have a question from Ward 1. Erin, go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you for that. That was very helpful. I just am curious here with the training that's offered. Is it ever mandatory? And
So
can
it isn't, yeah, it's not mandatory. It's definitely optional. I would suggest that, I'm looking at one of the questions that's really about, if council's having challenges getting the information they need or the financial support they need, I think the best solution in that situation would be to reach out to the help desk. We can get the school council member in touch with the financial support officer, and the financial support officer can really help to be the liaison to help sort of provide additional information, hopefully help the council to get the information that they're looking for.
Yeah, because I just find I find the biggest hiccup tends to be around the principal's knowledge. So I was wondering more specifically if the training for them is ever mandatory, the administrators and principals.
So yes, it's not mandatory, but it is strongly encouraged. And I think if there are specific questions at a school, we're happy to help provide that information. And obviously, if we sense that there's a need or lack of understanding or additional support that's needed, then we will actually recommend, hey, I think you would really benefit from this training.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Gordon, Ward 3, you're up.
Hello, there we go. I have a couple questions. One, where is the list? There was a list of school budget, non-board funds for each school. Where is that publicly available? Where would we find that?
So we're actually going to send that material out with these slides. So the PEC committee can help circulate that material. The February FBEC meeting of the board has a more comprehensive report of school generated funds for each school. And I'm happy to send the direct link for that report out as well with the materials for this meeting.
If you could do that, that would be great. There was a comment that somebody sent to me about model schools on the budget. I'm looking at a school budget for one of the schools in TDSB, and it doesn't list either nutrition or model school as a separate line item on the school budget.
So, so the nutrition programs are separate from the Toronto District School Board budget. So that's why the local nutrition program committees would provide that budget information directly, because those are actually not part of the TDSB, although they operate within the TDSB schools. The model school information budget model is something that we didn't have previously on the website, but we are looking to add that information because that was something that I know others had been looking for. So that isn't currently included, but it is something that we will be looking to add.
And one final question. Some schools have school councils, they run their pizza day. Others are run by the schools themselves. And when it's run by the schools themselves, that's a substantial amount of money. In our school, it was $23,000 last year.
Okay.
Is there a reporting requirement to say, this is how much money we raised for non-board funds, and this is where we spent that money? And is that required to be sent to school councils and or required to be sent out to all the parents in that school so that they know where the money that's being raised for their school is being spent? Like specifically, we spent X number of dollars on instruments, we spent X number of dollars on field trips, we spent X number of dollars on whatever.
Understood. So there's no specific I'm going to call it formal requirement to share that detailed level of report that you're referencing. But certainly if there is large amounts of money, which is really what you're talking about at your school, then there should be an ask of the school principal to share that basic financial information at the level needed. And that's obviously going to vary school by school. And, you know, they should be able to share that information with you. And our team is happy to help with extracting and pulling that information and supporting the principal to do that. But to answer your question, there is no formal annual expected reporting requirement. It's really just sort of an at request, working together sort of relationship to provide information as needed.
It seems to be an oversight of accountability because you've got, it could have a fairly large amount of money sitting there and the parents have no way of knowing what that money is being spent. If they ask the question and the principal doesn't answer the question, I don't know where to go from there.
Yeah, so that's a fair point. So what I will tell you is there is accountability in the sense that all of the school councils are required to provide a plan annually as to, you know, how they intend their school generated funds to be spent within the year. So that is an internal reporting requirement, and that's a mandated requirement.
Would that
I will
include?
also say that there's also internal audit function within the board that the school generated funds are obviously an important part of audit and control procedures, which are, you know, ensuring that at each school, the receipts, the backup, the information is all kept, the bank statements are signed off on. So that is, I'm going to call it internal validation and reporting that's already happening. What you're really looking for, though, is that external sharing with the individual parent councils. Again, I think each school should be requesting this information from their principal. My expectation is that the principal would provide that information. We're happy to support any situations where this parent council has asked for information and they're needing some support in getting it.
When you talk about this report for school generated funds, does that include funds raised by the school but not by the school council? So
yes, when I refer to school generated funds, it would be both the funds raised by the school as well as funds raised by parent councils.
Okay, can I get a little more detail on that? So the school council should have or does create a report, create a budget for all the funds raised by the school?
No, sorry. So the school councils, if there's an active school council at the school, the expectation would be that the treasurer of the school council would provide a financial report as part of the regular meeting cadence of the school council. So that's really the separate school council activity. We also then, you're mentioning the school generated funds that are raised directly by the school that are not school council managed funds. We also refer to those as school generated funds. There's no external to the school council or to external parties reporting requirements for how that money's spent or what it's spent on, but certainly, you know, that's something that can be requested by individual school councils.
So if I may just assist a bit to emphasize Stephanie's point, at your regular school council meetings, the school council should report on their revenues and expenditures, and similarly, the principal should keep you updated on their school budget as well as their non-board funds. And if you're having challenges there, you can work through the school support team.
There's a big challenge with the word should. Right? It needs somewhere in the regulations, it needs to be changed to must. because there are lots and lots of school councils that simply don't have access to that information or are completely unaware of it.
So we're willing to take that back and think about it. The challenge is, again, because you don't always have a school council, and some schools unfortunately don't do a lot of fundraising, it's difficult to put that onus on a principal to do it every month if it's, infrequent. But there should be regular reporting of some type to the school council.
I would have been happy with once a year. Right. So, but I mean, it's not that, if there is an active school council, it's not that big a trick for him to say, okay, we've raised this much money, maybe
No.
quarterly.
Again, yes. So
It's not
we
a
have
huge act.
583 schools, so you have different situations in every school. But we always, as Stephanie said, if you're seeing a challenge with your school, talk to the help desk, to your school support team, and we can work with the school principal and our superintendent for that school to ensure the appropriate information is out to the school community.
Thank you. We have 3 more questions, and then we will wrap up this section. First, Melanie, then we have a question on the chat from Laura, and then we go to Andrew. So Melanie? Okay, Melanie, you don't have a question. All right, so we have a question from Laura, and she asks, is there a suggested school council budget template that can be shared?
So I don't believe we have a school budget template. Brandy Walter, if I know you're online, can you confirm that?
No, we don't have a template for a school budget available.
For the school council, but if that's something that school councils would appreciate having, that's something we're happy to take away and look to provide a standard template.
Yep, we could develop that. Yep.
Thanks, Stephanie and Brandy. Yeah, I mean, this is my last year. I've been a part of council for 8 years, and I think that having a standardized template that every treasurer uses would be, and has a history within in the template, would be hugely helpful for the ongoing historical information and also for the learning curve for all the new people that are coming in, for sure.
Good point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And our last question goes to Andrew.
Thank you. I myself am a CPA, and I highly support providing tools and resources to school councils that can provide that consistency around financial reporting. I think it's very important. I have sort of 2 questions. You spoke about the school budget committee. I guess I am familiar with the collective agreement for elementary teachers, and it does have a clause that speaks to and says all schools will establish a school council budget committee no later than the end of September for each school. Participation on the school budget committee shall be open to any ETTF members. So again, I guess from the slide, it spoke about that principals are highly encouraged to create a budget committee. So are principals allowed to, I guess, optionally choose which parts of collective agreements they choose to enforce? I guess that's my question.
So I'm not familiar with the specific collective agreement that you're referencing. In many schools, there are budget committees with active participation, including the school councils. Certainly, it's recommended. So that is our approach to budget committees.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I have is, there appears to be a trend occurring at schools across the district where fundraising practices that had normally been or previously been the purview of school councils, principals are stepping in and taking over those functions. Example, like a pizza lunch, for example. And I understand that there's a lot of work that goes into organizing things. My concern is that the board staff, or including principals, are devoted their time and energy to these types of activities instead of the education of our children. And what kind of guidance is provided around that? And then one additional piece is, like, spoke about that principals can raise these funds But again, the board staff continually tell school councils, you got to make sure that you tell people what you're raising the money for before you raise it. And I don't see where the accountability is if the principals are choosing to step in to do that. And there also appears to be inconsistency across how schools choose to raise funds.
So I'll, through you, Madam Chair, I'll take the first part of the question. Was around the development of school budgets. It is best practice for a school principal to create a school budget committee, as well as have a staffing committee to discuss the budget. The challenge at some schools, though, is there is a lack of interest in being involved in that activity. So it's not necessarily that the principal can't find a committee members to be on that school budget committee, but they should, as best practices, do that. And then as far as the fundraising, your comment, the ministry policy memorandum says that fundraising should be done with a purpose, explained to the community and the parents of where the funds are being raised, and it should be spent in those ways. And that's what we inform our principals that they should be doing, and so should school councils. If you're fundraising for a playscape, that money goes to the playscape. If there's surplus money occasionally, and there's times where you may raise $10,000 and only need $8,000, then the school council should make it known through their minutes that they took that extra $2,000 and did library books or whatever else they may have done with it. But there should be transparency reporting on all those funds.
All right, thank you. And if you could just confirm for us, Stephanie, Nicole asks if the correct contact for the help desk is businessdevelopment@tdsb.on.ca.
So that is not the correct email address for the Business Services Help Desk. It's businesshelpdesk@tdsb.on.ca. So as soon as I switch screens, I will put it into the chat. That information is also included in the slide deck, and we will circulate the slide deck to the committee following this meeting. Thank you, Brandy. That's the correct address, the one in blue on the screen.
Great, thank you so much. So we'll close this section. So thank you so much, Craig Snyder, Stephanie Harris, and Brandy Waldriff, for joining us this evening and taking time out of your busy schedules.
Thank you.
All right, so we will now be moving on to the working group reports, and we're going to start off with the operational effectiveness working group, and I believe we have a motion. Who will be speaking on behalf of this group?
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Katie Bankasing here. Yes, we would like to, and the operational effectiveness working group would like to put forward a proposed budget for the 2024-25 school year. And actually spent the majority of our October meeting working together with the existing working group leads and to discuss and make some decisions around our budget, which for this year is, I don't want to say tight, I don't think that's the appropriate reference, but it is already been requested and which also means that there is a lot of great work happening at the committee and within the working groups. So we had voted in June's meeting to carry forward a number of items that were the priorities of specific working groups into this year's budget. And then we had requests come forward from special events to fund this year's PIAC conference in early 2025. So, what do we do? All right, so the Operational Effectiveness Working Group proposes the following PIAC budget for the 2024-25 school year for approval. Included are the annual recurring expenses, which are operating expenses mainly to support our communication efforts around Canva, our domain hosting, as well as MailChimp for our monthly newsletters and other activities. We also are bringing forward the approved carryover expenses from our 2023-24 budget and the working group requests to continue PIAC priority initiatives. So the recurring annual operating costs to support PIAC business includes $1,000 for communication expenses, as mentioned, MailChimp, domain hosting, and Canva. With that as well, or for our business, PIAC business, $1,500, which we approved at last month's meeting to provide dinner and refreshments for in-person attendees at up to 6, and forgive me, that's an error, most likely, but hybrid general meetings. We also have our working group requests right now, which include $25,000 for special events. They spoke to this at the end of last month's meeting to host the 2025 PIAC conference. $2,000 for strategic planning to host the annual planning day session for members, and $4,000 right now for communications for our PIAC website AODA upgrades. And I know that communications will speak to that later. We also have a carryover of $11,000 for our schools council support working group and the ward engagement events, which we'd like to really get implemented this year. We also have a request for $500 or an allocation of $500 for business cards requested from members who are seeking or interested in having cards that are personalized emails, or let's say more specific email contact information to support their ward engagement. And do I move the motion?
So could I have somebody put forward that motion? First, Musa will put forward the motion, and we would need a seconder. Melanie will second the motion. Now we will open the floor for discussion and questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Laura from Ward 10. I'm just curious, and this is my first PIAC meeting that I've been to, how this budget is relates to previous budgets, like percentage increase or decrease.
Thank you, Laura. The amounts are allocated annually, of course, come down from the ministry. We learned in September that we've been allocated $45,381 for PIAC business for this year, and that's been a slight increase from last year's budget of just roughly $2,000. I can't get more specific around the calculations and the percentages and increases and things, but that's our dollar amount for this year.
Thanks for that clarity.
All right, if there are no other questions or comments, then we will proceed to vote, which will be a roll call.
Hello?
Andrew has a question.
Just a quick point of order. Due to this budget making adjustments to previous decisions of the committee, i.e. changing what was previously approved, based on Robert's Rules of Order, it would require a 2/3 vote because we were reversing our previous decisions. Thank you.
All right, a 2/3 vote will pass this budget. So we will start with Ward 1. Your vote. Approve? Sorry? Oh, in favor, opposed, or abstain? Ward 1? Ward 2?
Sorry, come back to me for a second, please.
I'm sorry?
Can you come back to me for 1 second?
Ward,
Ward 2.
yes, we're just getting to you. Yes,
Sorry, in favor, in favor.
in favor.
Oh, sorry. Yes, in favor.
Thank you. Ward 3,
In favor.
and that's Gordon. Ward 4,
Ward 4, Tamasha Grant, in favor.
we have no Ward 5. Ward 6,
Ward 6 in favor.
all right.
Hi, sorry, Ward 1 here.
Yes,
Ward 1 in
1.
favor.
All right, Aaron, in favor.
Sorry.
It's okay. Ward 7,
In favor.
Alice. Ward 8,
Ward 8, Kadeen in favor.
thank you. Ward 9, Ward 10,
Ward 10 in favor.
Bruce, thank you. Ward 11, Charles,
Ward 11 in favor.
thank you. Ward 12,
Ward 12, Susan, in favor.
thank you. Ward 13, I don't think is here.
Ward 13, June, in favor.
Thank you. Ward 14,
Ward 14, Jenny, in favor.
thank you, Jenny. Ward 15, I don't think Ward 15 is here. Ward 16,
Ward 16, Eden, in favor.
thank you. Ward 17, Ward 17 is not here. Ward 18, thank you, Seema. Ward 19,
Musa Alu, Ward 19, in favor.
thank you, Musa. Ward 20,
Ward 20, Chris in favor.
Chris, thank you. Ward 21,
Ward 21, Azim. Just before I say a vote, I need to know what's the change from the previous budget to this? What's the difference in the amount? I missed that part. That's why I just need to know.
Point of order, we actually can't have any questions at this point. We're voting on the motion. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm in favor.
thank you, Zim. Ward 22, Ward 22 is not here. And Tovid from the Toronto Bangladeshi parents is not here. Okay, thank you. So we have a unanimous approval for that from all of the voting members here. And that motion passes. Thank you. Do you have further business you'd like to discuss, Katie?
The bylaws review will continue, and that will be our primary focus for November's meeting. So that's all for now.
Great, thank you. All right, so we will now move towards the membership working group.
Thank you. So the membership working group report is focused around the co-chair election. The membership working group has a sub-working group called the nominations, a sub-working group, and has put forward, according to the bylaws, procedures to be approved by the committee prior to the election occurring. I will just like to note that in doing the work for the this year's co-chair elections, the nominating committee did review last year and noted a number of discrepancies that sort of would prevent an observer from believing that there was a fair and democratic process that occurred. A couple of pieces was one parent member, the current co-chair at the time was denied the opportunity to vote in their own election for which they were a candidate. As well, at that, during that vote, there were 3 members who, according to Regulation 612, were not actually members of the committee, and they were allowed to vote. So, welcome to read the report. The Sarah Ali has agreed to be a returning officer with myself. As we are going to be returning officers, we will not be putting ourselves forward as candidates this year for co-chair, and we hope to ensure there is a fair and transparent and democratic process this year. Thank you. And with that, I'd move the motion. The motion, PIAC approve the co-chair election procedure as presented in Appendix 2 of this report. And can I have a seconder?
Sorry, could you just please repeat that motion again?
PIAC approve the co-chair election procedure as presented in Appendix 2 of this report.
All right, could I have somebody put that motion forward?
I can put it forward. Francis Shawera, Ward 2.
Francis, thank you. And a seconder? Musa. Musa, you are Ward 19. Thank you. And
Now that it's been put to the floor, I do have a question, so I'm giving my chair officially over to Janice. Could we receive clarification as this actually affects the motion itself when it comes to Appendix 1? Just for the membership to understand when it comes to the lists provided and how that affects membership of PIAC.
Perhaps board staff can comment on Regulation 612 and how it applies to membership of the committee. I'm seeking advice from staff. The question is from Zina.
Oh, no, the question I posed to membership was to receive clarification on the two lists provided when it comes to membership for PIAC, as that does affect elections going forward. It just affects PIAC. So just so for membership to understand the two lists provided in Appendix A. Sorry, Appendix 1, my apologies.
Through you, Chair, this is not my report. I
Sorry.
assume that the chair of the committee would speak to what is outlined in the report. So
Sure.
is that all right, Andrew? Thank
So
you.
according to Regulation 612, which governs all PICs, including PIAC, the regulation outlines that people can be appointed or elected for either a 1-year or 2-year term. It does not provide for extensions. It only provides for members to be reelected or reappointed. So the term, if once 2 years is up, the person sitting in that position is no longer a PIAC member. You will note in Appendix 1, there are members who have actually been allowed to attend PIAC meetings going on almost 4 years without an election. So again, according to Regulation 612, these people are not members of the committee. And I hope board staff can advise on Regulation 612.
Through you, Chair, could you be precise, Andrew, as to what you're seeking us to advise on? What it states in Regulation 612 about PIAC memberships?
Yes.
So Regulation 612 outlines clearly PIAC membership. I don't wish to read it for members, but it also provides a lot of purview for PICs, whether TDSB's PIAC or PICs across the province, to establish their own terms of reference that outlines how they operate as well. So is there something specific, Andrew, that you are suggesting that PIAC has added in their own bylaws that is outside of the purview of the regs?
Would a PIC or PIAC be permitted to allow members to go beyond a 2-year term? According to the regulations.
Through you, Chair, the regulations actually speaks to a 2-year term, but the language throughout the regulations, and if I may read the sections of it, in terms of officers in the regs does say 2-year terms, but the regs also uses a lot of language around at the discretions of PIC's bylaws. So I could interpret that it provides PIC some flexibility when building their bylaws to build elements into that bylaws. I was also under the understanding through you, Chair, that this committee had at some point made the decision that where vacancies may arise and wards have yet to hold elections, those members will remain seated until the ward elections are held. I also understand, but I've been around a while, so please feel free to correct me, that came from the same principles in Regulation 612 within school councils. Members remain seated as school council members until those elections are held. So that was my understanding through which PIAC was able to then, within that purview, be able to say, we understand that the regulation states 2 years, but we also understand that the regulation gives PIAC the purview within its bylaws to outline some criteria as well, and that was under the practice in which it did. I'll put it back to you, Chair.
Sorry, can you please speak to the bylaw where that is indicated? I've read the bylaws recently, and that is not in our bylaws.
Through you, Chair, I don't have it before me. I didn't pull up your bylaws. But if you do have it, Andrew, I assume you can relay that to the committee.
So there is no reference to that in the bylaws. The other piece I think that the committee needs to be very concerned about is, again, our committee is devoted to parent engagement. And again, it is not the engagement of the current parents on this committee, okay? It is the engagement of all parents of the TDSB. And for us to allow us to have ongoing in perpetuity membership of this committee and not allow an opportunity for other members, parents and caregivers to step forward. And I am very concerned because if you look on our website, it shows vacancies, and this was under the previous membership, and I intend a membership working group approach, I intend to change this, is parents would not know that there was an expired term and that they could actually put themselves forward. And that included the previous co-lead of the membership working group. So, I am very concerned. I'll look back to our history going back less than 5 years when we used to have alts and reps. The committee, the first vote, did not eliminate the alt position, which was an inferior position to the co-rep, because the inferior position to the representatives, because the representatives wanted to maintain their power. And I don't think we are demonstrating to school councils best practices of how to conduct, governance at school council level nor at a committee level. Thank you.
Can you go ahead?
So I'm just wondering, Andrew, then, based on the concerns of maybe having this second part of Appendix 1 or the second list of members with expired terms, and maybe also then seeking clarity on what process then is going to be used to rectify that, or bylaws then stating, or bylaw exists that then enables them to continue in their role, serving and attending general meetings, making votes on our motions and recommendations. With that in question, what are you suggesting? And I'm not sure then what it is that you're proposing or hoping for to be resolved or clarified that then enables the nominations process.
All I'm proposing is that this committee follow Regulation 612 of the Education Act. Again, in the question that you stated, you're again advocating for only the members on the committee. And again, I really think that goes against what PIAC is about and about parent and caregiver engagement. If those members wish to be or continue on PIAC, they are welcome to seek election and come back to the committee. I know I'm actively engaged since I became the co-lead of membership working group with trustees to try to get elections as soon as possible. I have been frustrated over the past 2 years at the slowness for us to have the ability to have elections. I have continually advocated to this committee that we should take over our own election processes so it can go more quickly. But again, that has not sought traction with many members, and hopefully I guess we can rectify that. But as it stands, according to Regulation 612, The members at the bottom of the list would not be considered PIAC members or a PIC member, and as such, they are ineligible to vote.
Okay, thank you. And the reason I ask for clarity around that is because I understand, trustees are responsible for facilitating the elections. There have been challenges with that. We've kind of like been attempting to address that. And you also spoke to that, that whatever the issues are around those elections occurring, but I'm not sure that I'm advocating only for the members that are listed or the existing members, but just seeking to understand what is it that we're saying they cannot vote, that we should be trying to do the elections or hosting those elections to fill those positions or get them brought up to date. Like, I just want to understand what it is that we're suggesting, because I think what started this was Zena asking, how does this list then influence the process or affect the process that you're putting forward for us to vote on in the appendix 2?
So just to clarify, I don't think the committee actually has the authority to override Regulation 612. So just as membership, as has been going on for a number of years, and if you read, is responsible for tracking and monitoring membership, the membership working group is just making clear about who is a member and who is not a member currently.
Michelle, I believe you wanted to have the word.
Through you, Chair, yes, just 2 comments in response to the ward rep's comments. One, that it is a valid concern that ward elections are not happen as rapidly as it should. And I know there's been work where there's been communication to trustees to try to expedite that process, because that process does slow down your membership structure. In relation to Regulation 612, Regulation 612 does offer PICs the purview to draft their bylaws around membership. What we need to clarify is whether there was a motion that was approved by this committee around extending membership term until elections are held at the ward level. If there's a motion approved by the board and if it is in the bylaws, then it is allowable. Regulation 612 doesn't prevent it. So through your chair, Andrew has suggested that it's not in the bylaws. So I'm just sitting here going through it or looking for the motion with the hope that I could find something. Back to you, Chair.
Seema, go ahead.
Just for context, it's in a draft version of the bylaws that weren't approved, maybe not this year, but the previous year. There was some wording and some verbiage that needed to be redone. And the operational effectiveness lead at that time had to leave abruptly. And I know in the operational effectiveness group this year, we've been trying to tackle those bylaws, but it is in the draft to allow them to stay until their trustees allow them to, until the trustees run the elections. It just wasn't approved because of some other wording in there.
Sorry, so it's not currently approved, as long as you're aware of?
Yeah, so that wasn't the piece that was not approved. There was another part of the bylaw, another change that was in there as well. That part wasn't approved, so the entire change to the bylaws was not approved.
So even if we can take staff advice that PIAC has the ability to override regulations to 612, PIAC has not done that.
I think we've been trying to get the bylaws updated. Katie, since you took over last year, it's been a bit of a challenge trying to tackle that. And it's something that's on our list of to-dos, like number 1 for this year.
Through you, Chair, just asking members if you can please speak directly into the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
If not, you're not going to be able to be heard online. Thank you.
Sorry.
Katie?
Well, just in response to that, absolutely, we know that our bylaws need to be brought up to date, and we are discovering, especially as we move through the realities of hybrid meetings and transitioning out of our virtual, that it's taking time for us to get things up to date. I know that I've heard even since last year your concerns, Andrew, around the nominations process. We want to bring all of these things into view in the bylaws review, but just a bit of expectation setting that it's not going to happen quickly. The conversation is going to take us time for us to not only as members, I think right now, importantly, and for all of our new members, learn and understand our bylaws. This is important, but then also to do the review that's going to really reflect where we are currently. But I hear your point, Andrew, and I wonder, then do we need to officially make the extension of these members, terms official through a vote to kind of give rest to this and then continue with our bylaw review work, which we know is going to be a priority for our membership throughout this year? Like, I'm just trying to think, I don't think it's fair to get stuck here. We know that they're showing up. What do we do about that? And at the same time, give acknowledgement to the fact that, yes, this needs to be addressed in a way that people feel good about.
Again, if we want to take an approach of our internal membership being self-interested and, furthering the voices that are at this table and only those voices, then I guess, that's an approach that could be considered. I know in the past, PIEC has been very deliberative about the bylaws process because I've been involved with it a couple of times. And I think if the committee chooses to attempt to do that, I actually don't think it meets mustard considering Regulation 612. The committee is welcome to do that, and I think parents across the TDSB will see that for what it is.
Zena, would you take the chair, please?
And then after Janice, I have Siva there.
I just wanted to comment, Andrew. I know you've made a couple of, you've voiced your opinion on how you view our bylaws and how you view people's work towards the bylaws, and that you feel that they haven't been going as smoothly as you would hope. However, I think it's pretty well accepted that we have a number of people that sit in our meetings that perhaps are on expired terms, but they're fully contributing individuals. And I would think that we've been accepting their free work for many months, and in some cases, as you've said, many years. So, and in consideration of the fact that there seems to be a lot of discussion and confusion as to whether or not we consider these people to be full-fledged members and whether or not they should have a vote, I would like to see this particular issue brought up in a subsequent meeting and a specific motion put forth to address this specific issue, as opposed to mixing it in with the current motion, which is to approve a election on November 19th.
I guess I'll respond to that in that last year when you were the membership co-lead and running the election, you made a determination to not allow me to vote. It was the election procedures were not actually even approved. So I guess I'm trying to understand how you're able to make this statement today, and yet the actions you took last year. Please elaborate.
The nomination committee as a group made a decision that the current and outgoing co-chairs would not have a vote because they are not ward representatives, and the ward representatives have the vote. Secondly, I guess my point is that this is a very specific issue, and whether or not I agree with it, that's not really the point. The point is that it really deserves its own motion, separate from us deciding today as a motion whether or not we're going to approve a election on Tuesday, November 19th. I think it would be better to take that aside and deal with it as a separate motion.
Just for the education of all members here, last year I was actually part of the nomination working group and was at the meeting where we spoke about the regulations, even though they never got to approval because that was purview of the co-leads for that working group. And it was never discussed that co-chairs would not be allowed to vote at that meeting. So I'm not sure where that determination was made between that meeting. But again, I was part of that meeting. I was part of the nomination working group. And yeah, I just want to make that aware to the committee.
I have Seema, but Michelle, were you responding to or?
Through you, Chair, if the comment is related specifically to this, I just wanted to put forth options to the floor of how you may move forward, because we do have a number of other items tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm thinking at this point, definitely Seema who's been waiting, or, oh, Seema's not waiting anymore. Okay.
I can bring it up next time.
At this point, if there are no other questions, in order for this to pass, is another, there's either, there were, oh, I have Musa, sorry. Yes, Musa?
One quick question. I see some of the members, their term has ended since 2022, January. So why isn't this issue pursued with the trustees by PIEC or any other relevant authority?
Perhaps Janice could speak to this. She was the previous co-lead of the membership working group.
It apparently is just a matter of my trustee not finding the time to run an election, and subsequently, she has taken a leave of absence and is now running for a city councillor position. So currently, we haven't had a forum to actually have an election for our ward.
So I would just note that, again, Janice being the co-lead of the membership working group, in 6 months from January to June was not able to schedule a meeting. And again, but she's allowed to continue to vote, to continue to do this. It's an inherent conflict of interest.
I wasn't done speaking, sorry.
That's okay. No, just to note that we probably do have to keep moving. Musa, continue, but it's just to the group. Because we have other items that we do need to get through, I'm going to have to be the time police here, I guess, and at one point, maybe after Musa, if we can move on. I will share, though, after Musa speaks, we would need a request of 3 members of this group if we want to actually vote on this, this particular item. But if we don't have a request of 3 members, then it's not a recorded vote.
You mean a roll call?
Roll call vote, yes, sorry. I apologize, yes. So Musa, go ahead, and then at this point, we'll let Musa be our last speaker. I know there's a couple other people that want to ask questions, but we're just looking at our time right now. And we want to make sure that we can actually move through items on this agenda.
Okay, that's fine. It's just, I'm here since last year and I've been seeing there's a big lack of follow-up on issues that are very important, especially with the membership. PIEC co-reps, I see so many empty spots, which must be filled in by the trustees. And I think this is not right, what is being done. And as PIEC, we should be able to pursue these positions with all the trustees and ask them, because it's part of their job. I understand they have a lot of responsibilities, but then these postings are also very important, especially for PIEC. And it also impacts all the other school council members and all the other work that the PIEC co-reps do in their wards. Without these reps, all this work are not done. And this is not acceptable.
Thank you, Musa. Actually, could I give them?
Sorry, just one quick thing. Musa, I am committed as
Through
the
you,
co-lead.
Chair, order. Could you please have order in the room, please, Chair? So, Andrew, were you asking to respond to that question through the chair?
No, can I speak? But again, it is my report.
No disputing that. I just wanted to be sure that we're moving through the process in terms of having the speakers list and respecting that speakers list. Through you, Chair.
Again, it was my report, so I'm not unsure what the objection is.
So Andrew's going to respond to Musa. Again, folks, I'm concerned about a little bit of time right now, although I do see 2 more questions. I have one from Alice and one from Azim. This is a very big conversation, a very important conversation, to be honest, and I respect that. So after Andrew's response, I will have Alice, Azim, and then at this point, I do have to cut this off. I apologize ahead of time, and that is because we need to keep this meeting moving. We really do. Sorry, folks.
So to Musa, I with Francis became co-lead of the membership working group less than a month ago. I'm committed to getting all these positions filled within the next 3 months, either through trustee-supported ward forum elections, or PIAC is able to host its own elections, and we'll make sure that that occurs.
Thank you, Andrew. I have Alice, and then I have Azim, and then question for Andrew. Andrew, this is a motion recommendation. So if there are three members that would like a recorded vote, we will do that. Oh, Michelle, sorry.
Through you, Chair, has just been asked to be added to the speakers list.
Thank you.
I would like a recorded vote, Ward 1. I don't know how we do that.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. We have one for a recorded vote, but right now I'm looking at Alice, and then I'm looking at Azim, and Michelle would like to.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
Ward 1, that member is on the list and is currently not a member of PIAC.
Ward 1 here. Yeah, I am. Sorry. I've been the Ward 1 rep for a long time, and because my term has expired and I agreed to stay on, I am a voting rep. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with Aaron. That seems very targeted and personal, and I think you guys need to take this offline. I mean, you guys need to get some kind of point of order here right now, because this
folks,
is very.
can I get order
it
here?
seems like the Andrew show right now.
Folks, again, we have a speakers list right now. We have Alice, we have Azim. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, all. I just wanted to say, at least in my case, I see that I'm on the list. There was an election last year, and I was the only person who put forward like a nomination for myself, and so just unanimously we went into the ward meeting, and I was elected again. So I just wanted to clarify that maybe the trust. I'm seeing that maybe my trustee did not communicate that, and I didn't even realize that it wasn't communicated, and that may be the case for other folks here. I'm going to forward the minutes to Andrew after this meeting so that you all can have that recorded and copying the trustee. But I think it would be helpful and productive if we maybe channel our energy to trying to maybe work with the membership, work with the trustees, because I feel like because this is a volunteer-based position, there could be a lot of, I mean, most of us work, we're working parents, we maybe have multiple children, taking care of intergenerational caregivers and so forth. In my case, I'm a single parent as well. So I would say these kinds of things could easily, maybe I'm thinking, in similar to my case, it could have been lost within communication. So I think putting our energy into kind of being productive and maybe not pointing fingers, I think might go a long way in this meeting. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Alice. I have Azim.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the chance to speak. Well, my question was whether members on that list, which are considered to be not members, allowed to vote. Well, as I heard now that, yes, we are not allowed to vote, then the previous motion that we voted for should be invalid. Then there should be another voting for that previous motion.
I would agree with that, and I would have raised the objection then, but I would wanted this conversation during the membership working group report.
Because it is no fault of the members that they are not being allowed to be members and vote. It's the trustees who should be questioned, and I would say not questioned, but requested to conduct the elections. It's not in control of any of the members to hold the elections by themselves. So please look into this, Chair. Thank you.
Again, I guess the point is, it's prescribed to your term, just as Regulation 612 states that there'll be a new committee, a new school council each year. What if the members of that committee supported by the principal just decided to stay on? Like, again, there sort of are rules laid out. The legislature made these determinations and put it in regulations were created. Again, what if our members of parliament just decided to stay beyond the 4 years and not have a general election? Does that sound democratic?
Not at all.
As far as I remember, there was a motion, but I have no access to the motion when I believe it was Sharon Grant who was the co-chair at that time. So if at all we go back into the history and check the motions for this, then I remember that there was a provision that yes, members who are due for the elections can be the members just to maintain the participation of the parents, because as we see that there are so many vacancies around in so many wards and not getting filled. And if at all you remove the members who are above the term, then PIAC will be having very less participation. That was just for this reason that this motion was passed. If at all we search, we can find that. Thank you.
I feel like this is big. This is again important. I don't want to cut anyone off. I keep saying two more, and therefore I'm not even following through. But the reality is, I feel this is important, and I'm going to at one point have to extend our meeting tonight. And I apologize, everyone, but this is where we are right now. I have Kadeen, I have Seema. Sorry, I apologize.
I'm also trying to put up my hand, but I can't find the hand feature. So
Christopher?
that's Chris from
Sorry
Ward
about
20.
that. Okay, there we go. So I have Kadeen, I have Michelle, I have Seema, I have Christopher, and then at one point we're going to determine what we are officially going to be voting on because we need clarity.
Yep, I
That's
think
all.
Chris should speak first.
Oh,
'Cause we have-
I also put I have my hand up.
Oh, is that your?
It's Susan Lee from Ward 12.
I apologize, Susan. Okay, so bear with us a second. We want to make sure we're not losing anyone here. So I have Kadeen, I have Michelle, I have
Please let
Seema.
the members who we haven't heard from yet
Okay,
go ahead.
thank you, Kadeen, for that. So I have Susan. Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just feel that perhaps we're just at this point, we're wasting a lot of time. I agree with Janice. I think maybe the motion of elections and membership, that one motion shouldn't be put together but separated so we can all vote on this, since it seems to be such a hot topic. I think election of the chair is one thing, but whether a member is a voting member or not because of the lack of election at the ward level should be something that we should all discuss. I agree with Andrew in one point, in that we do, we should try and have PIAC reps elected on their term and according to their term, but it doesn't necessarily always happen. For myself and Nicole, we just got reelected with Ward 12, but I had to really go after my trustee and really push him to hold the election so that I could be part of this. So if we don't do that, we don't have quorum, I don't think, right? Isn't that true? If we just allow only those who have term, does that hold quorum, or does that mean then the 10 people or the 12 people who are still in their term, that's the only voting members? I feel like that wouldn't be quite representative either.
So there's no issue of quorum. The regulations actually speak to that vacancies in the committee do not prevent the committee from doing its work. And quorum is based on the number of seated members. So that's not an issue.
But it's not just about quorum, it's representation of the ward. And you're talking about representing all the parents in the ward. But if you don't allow certain members whose terms are expired to vote to represent their ward, isn't that a disservice to the ward as well?
I completely agree with you. I think you should be asking that question of the former co-leads of membership working group. I know there will be some upcoming elections. I've already engaged with trustees, and give me 3 months and this will be addressed. But I think this committee really needs to decide whether it wants to represent to the parents and caregivers of the TDSB that they prefer to maintain their own interest rather than support general parent engagement.
It's sort of like a memory game. Chris, yes, Christopher, we have not heard from you yet. Yes.
You guys give me a moment to unmute there. All right. So it's relation trustees to hold.
Christopher, you're kind of getting out.
Through you, Chair. Chris, on the line, we're not hearing you. I'm not sure if it's your microphone. Through you, Chair, may we move forward with the list and come back to Chris if necessary? Thank you.
Absolutely. So I had Kadeen.
I think I must say I was prepared to.
Sorry about that. I just got disconnected.
We can hear you now.
Okay, awesome. All right. So as I was saying, there's a lot of discrepancies that Andrew does make a very strong point about keeping up with regulations. However, the list that he's provided for us does seem to have a couple of discrepancies in terms of who is reasonably been elected from who has not been reasonably elected, which means that we have to go back and take a look at this list and make sure that the people who are elected are being properly sworn for as part of membership. Because any which way you look at it, whether they're not elected or they are elected, these votes are going to be in discrepancy. So I'm seeing myself, I think that we're going to need to do perhaps a roll call this, and I think that we need to take a look at this list in detail and probably properly. That's my thoughts on that.
I completely agree with you. I will make sure the list is double confirmed prior to the election occurring.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Christopher. I have Kadeen, I have Seema, and then if, am I missing anyone? No? Okay. And then Janice. Kadeen, go ahead.
Thank you. I was prepared to, for this conversation, vote to approve or, have the conversation and approve our co-chair nominations process so that could be upheld for next month's meeting. But I do feel that where we're at right now, we're not going to get to that point until we make a decision related to this list and whether or not the current members here listed as and being discussed in this conversation as not eligible members or current members eligible to vote, that we vote to temporarily have their positions in place so that the list can be reviewed, ensure that it's current and correct and up to date, and that we can continue with our business as is for this meeting and forward, and then come back to this conversation. I don't know how else we can move forward because we're not going to be able to do anything else for our meeting this evening unless members are feeling good about their ability to participate. And if that means we need to vote, then I think that is, we'll put the motion on the floor and vote, to have their terms extended for at least a period of 6 months so we can get this stuff updated if it needs to be specific. And I have to put a time on that then till at least April or March of next year so that we can get some of this work done.
So 2 points. First of all, I don't think the committee actually has the authority to do that. And second of all, I would ask the Director of Education designate to speak to staff's position on this.
Through the chair, I have some difficulty with everything that's been raised tonight. And, given what's being called into question, I wonder if we can even continue the meeting. if there are people sitting around this table whose terms are up and people are contesting that, I think there's some work to be done.
Why am I not allowed to put a motion on the floor for us to vote on this right now if it's going to help further our business? I don't know. It has to come through a working group. Is that the concern?
Through you, Chair, this is what I was hoping to allude to. We're in a process right now where a motion has been put to the floor, right? A motion was approved, and we're now in the discussion of that motion. So I also heard a PIAC rep request an amendment to the motion, and the person who put the motion forward suggested that the committee may, but it may not be, I can't recall the language that was used, it may not be in the best practice of this committee to amend the motion, and the proposed, let me finish, please. And the recommendation was that this be separated, that the membership component be removed from the nominations process before. And the question is, at this point, you can't present another motion within a motion because you're in the midst of a motion right now. So you have to complete this process one way or the other. You're either going to amend the motion that's on the floor, but the person who put the motion on the floor has to be open to an amendment. And so someone may request a friendly amendment. If that's not accepted, then the motions process needs to continue, which means it goes to the floor. After that's done, then new motions may come through the floor. Back through you, Chair.
Thank you for that.
So the group bringing the motion to the floor, are you open to a friendly amendment to that motion?
Again, first, before I speak on that piece, I'd like to confirm with staff whether they think that the committee has purview to override Regulation 612.
Through you, Chair, I can answer that question if through you, Executive, if I may. No, the TDSB in no way supports the overriding or breaching of Regulation 612. We actually support the endorsement, but we also recognize many may review it and have varying interpretations of it. And so we can have a conversation about what that interpretation is offline. Now, when I read Regulation 612, it provides PICs, not just TDSB's PIAC, PICs across Ontario purviews to draft bylaws that enables them. The question that was on the floor earlier was this written in your bylaws that PIAC members whose terms have ended may remain seated until elections are held? We learned tonight that it was discussed in a bylaw revision, it was written in the revision, but because the bylaws revision have not come to fruition, that never got into the bylaws. So technically, if that's the case, then technically the name's here, right? Because you've been practicing it, and we've been practicing this with the assumption that it was approved in the bylaws. So the committee, does the committee have a choice as to whether they can vote what happens with this and bring that motion forward tonight around that status? It's absolutely at the discretion of the committee to pass a motion. That's not breaching Regulation 612. You had drafted the language, you just didn't get it in your bylaws. If someone chooses to bring that language tonight and that gets approved, that is at the purview of PIC, and you are not breaching your regulations. So, however, we're still at the point where there is a motion on the floor. You have a motion on the floor, so we need to deal with this motion on the floor before you can explore your other options. So the motion is to approve the recommendation as written. And the recommendation as written in Appendix 2 is that this be accepted as such, which would mean that the processes outlined for the elections of the co-chair in November will not include these individuals. That was built into the recommendations that's on the floor, and that's what you're voting on tonight. So members just need to be clear what it is they're voting on, and if there isn't room for a friendly amendment, we can keep this conversation going, Chair, but I think it's going to be a cyclical one. Cyclical is the word I'm looking for, sorry.
I see Seema, and
Point of order through the chair.
Sorry, I apologize to pause for a
Point
moment.
of order through the chair.
So as I've given everyone a chance to speak tonight, and I see Seema's hand, I feel terrible because I saw Crystal's. And if Crystal would still like to speak, my apologies, Crystal. Sorry.
Sorry,
point of
just
order.
one quick thing. I just want to confirm with the Director of Education designate that supports the approach that staff is taking that was just discussed.
Sorry, point of order from through the chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Christopher.
I just want to understand where we are on this. So there's the motion on the floor. The mover of the motion has not agreed to a friendly amendment. So what's on the floor right now is a discussion on the approval of the motion. Is that correct?
I have not made that determination yet. I'm waiting on staff advice.
I'm sorry, the question was for the chair, and I have the floor. So it's just a point of order to understand where it is. So through the chair, sorry.
To my understanding that the motion is as it was written, the recommendation was written is what's on the floor.
It's written as on the floor. So if the motion is not approved, did I understand from staff that a separate motion can be brought on the floor and that can correct the issues that have been brought up for the purpose of having a valid election for PIAC next month? Is that correct?
Thank you. If I can be recognized by the chair, I could provide clarification.
Yes, Executive Superintendent, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. There is a motion on the floor right now. Unless the mover rescinds the motion, we need to discuss the motion and vote on the motion. If the motion is defeated, another motion can be introduced to perhaps create a bylaw that extends the term until of the PIAC reps until the next election happens within the wards, which will legitimize then people sitting around the table to consider perhaps another motion or other motions, plural, and membership by way of the bylaw approval. If it is approved, then every other motion made, you have a legitimate set of people sitting around the table with their terms extended to vote on subsequent motions.
Thank you for the clarification. Back to chair.
So I know we have a question, possibly two questions. As well, there's a question to be asked to the mover of the motion, and that is, will this be rescinded? Are we voting on this motion as a committee at this point? And if we are voting on this, then as Executive Superintendent mentioned, there another motion could be developed, if I'm understanding as well. And I can say CK Dean, I see Seema, I apologize profusely to Crystal because poor Crystal's been super patient, and I see you, I really do. So, Crystal, did you want to ask?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. I see Seema, I see K Dean, and then we are going to ask our mover if this is being rescinded, or we are going to go to a vote.
Are we rescinding, or what are we doing? I don't know what I'm voting on.
And I apologize. To be clear, we need 3 current members to ask for that recorded vote.
Recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote, please, Ward 1.
Ward 20, recorded vote.
Andrew, go ahead.
So far, I only hear 2 members that are members of PIAC.
Recorded
Ward
vote, please.
1,
Ward 14.
recorded vote.
I apologize for clarity. Can I get those current official members?
Through you, Chair, I have 1,
Ward 1.
9, and 14. Or Ward 14, Ward 9?
Ward 20?
Ward 11.
Ward 20, Ward 11. I think we have a number of them on the floor.
We do, absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so now, if we are okay with going process with this vote, we are going to do a roll call to record this vote. Sorry, I apologize. Before we, we have Janice, we have Seema. We do have to eventually get to the vote, folks. We really do.
So just for clarity, Andrew, would you be willing to amend the vote to consider only the election date of November 19th and to consider this other issue of whether or not members with expired terms are considered to be legitimate voting members at another date and brought forth as a separate motion. Would you be open to amending this, your current motion as thus?
Janice, you are on the list and are currently not a member of PIAC, so I can't receive information from you.
So you're refusing to answer my question because you have decided that I'm not a member of PIAC? Just
And
for
as such,
clarity.
shouldn't be sitting
And
co-chair.
just for
Andrew's
clarity,
playing games.
last year
Can
you
we
chose to
call it?
deny my ability to vote.
Folks, sorry, order. I heard two voices speaking, and I also have a question from Seema.
We should be voting right now.
I was about to say.
Agreed, but I want to get to at least one more question, Aaron, and that's Seema. Sorry.
Okay, so yeah, my question was the same that Janice had, is are we gonna separate them into two motions so at least we can get the election date in place and that doesn't fall further behind? It's, what, 9:15? We have to leave? It's a work night. Let's get going. Thank you.
My suggestion is you just vote on this motion and see what happens.
We're going to move forward to a vote.
Ward 1 against.
Ward 2 in favor.
Ward 3?
Sorry, Ward 3 in favor.
Ward 3?
Sorry, Ward 3 in favor.
Sorry, thanks. Ward 4?
Ward 4, Tamasha Grant against.
Ward 6?
Ward 6 against.
Ward 7? Ward 8? We may not have 8 here. Do we? We do. Sorry.
Ward 8 against.
Ward 9?
Ward 9 against.
Ward 10?
Ward 10 in favor.
Ward 11?
Both of us on Ward 11 are expired terms. I would like to vote, and I'm voting against.
Ward 12?
Ward 12, I abstain because, because just I abstain from this one.
Thank you. Ward 13? We don't have Ward 13 here, do we? Sorry,
Ward
June, sorry.
13 June.
In favor or against?
No, I just June.
I'm a little confused. Ward 13, can we get a vote?
Oh, no, yeah, Ward 13 June, abstain.
Abstain? Thank you. Ward 14?
Ward 14 against.
Ward 15? Not here, sorry. Ward 16? Ward 16? Looking for a vote? We'll circle back. Ward 18?
Against?
Ward 19? Ward 19?
Oh, Ward 19, I heard Ward 18. Ward 19 abstain.
Abstain. Abstain, thank you. Ward 20?
The motion needs a little bit of work. I'm opposed.
Ward 21?
Ward 21 against.
Ward 22?
Ward 22 against.
Lava? Do we?
Which were the against?
Sorry, Laffy, can we get a call as to, we've been questioned as to how the wards voted, but we just know if it passed. Did this motion pass?
Motion passed?
No, I said it did not. I'm just confirming if it did or did not. Laffy, could you get an official on that?
But the question is, are the members who voted eligible to vote?
That's the other problem. Madam Chair, can you call a recess, please?
Can I get a recess for 5 minutes, please?
According to your bylaws, an abstention is neither counted for nor or against a motion. Notwithstanding to the contrary, in the event of a tie vote, the co-chair leading the meeting shall cast the deciding vote. So an abstention is not a vote in favor or against, it's just not counted. So if we remove the abstention.
Barely been done, but we are taking a 5-minute recess, folks. I know it's a marathon meeting. Sorry about that.
Recording stopped.
meeting to address the issue of PIAC membership status. And if that's the case, then I would assume that a motion needs to be put to the floor for adjournment.
So I would ask somebody to put to the floor to adjourn this meeting to then have a special meeting to address membership status.
I move the meeting be adjourned.
So we have one.
I second the motion.
Second. We have all kinds of people willing to second that. So our meeting is adjourned. We will be sending out a document because we do need that vote from membership to have that special meeting. Sorry.
Sir, I'd just like to address the group.
Recording stopped.